Hey, Coastline. So the last few weeks we've been talking about being prophets and what that means, what that looks like, and practicing prophesying over ourselves and other people. And hopefully you have been practicing and that you've kept practicing so that you can be more confident and more secure in tuning your dial in to what Holy Spirit's saying and sharing his heart for whoever he might bring you to. So we're going to kind of wrap it up today with things about how we give the words and also how we can receive words. But I need to make an important distinction before that. And that is this. What I've been talking about is what I call lowercase prophets, which is the truth and the fact and reality that we can all prophesy. We all have the ability to do that. We're all called to do that. So therefore, we are all prophets. But biblically, there is a distinction with what I call capital P prophets. So this is something we see in Ephesians 4, which lists out the gifts of Christ that he gives to his church. So these are leadership roles. It's often what we call the office of the prophet or the role of the prophet. And there's loads I could say and talk about that, but that's not what I've been doing. I've been talking about the lower P prophet idea, okay? Because without even knowing you, if you love Jesus, I know you're a lowercase prophet because we all have that ability and calling to prophesy and share God's heart and message with the world, with whoever and whenever, okay? Now, as we learn to do this, to practice the thing, to practice prophesying and step more out into it, it's important for us to know how to give these words. Because remember, the most important part of prophecy, the whole point of it actually, isn't to get a dead accurate word. It's to love that person. That's the point of prophecy. And so everything we do about our body language and the language we use and communicate with, we do from a place of loving that person. So really practically, that might mean you have to ask them before you lay hands on them. And I know within our culture and context, it's like, oh, that's obvious. Like, of course you would lay hands on them. But you should ask if that's okay. Oh, can I put my hand on your shoulder? Like, ask that question. The language you use should always be in a way that makes them feel safe and loved. So the way I prophesy over aid versus the way I prophesy over someone in our church who's uncomfortable with Holy Spirit versus a stranger on the street who's not a believer, all of those situations, I'm going to communicate differently. So it might be, if it's a stranger on the street, I might just outright call it out for the weirdness it is and say, hey, I know this is super weird, but I'm a Christian and I believe God talks to us. And so I feel like he has something he wants to say and encourage you with. Can I tell you that? You'd be amazed at how many people on the street have said yes to me because of that. Because everyone's like, oh, okay, sure. What does God think of me? So you could do something like that. Or let's say the prophecy is that they're a man of peace who's going to go into difficult situations and the divisiveness isn't going to touch him because he's such a man of peace. Well, I might just speak that over him and say something like, oh, you just really carry peace. I bet you end up in really crazy, chaotic situations, but you just always carry that peace. It's so strong in you. I'm giving the prophetic word. I'm prophesying over him, but I'm doing it in a way that even as an unbeliever, he can understand and actually receive. Another important thing about how we give these words is the timing. Remember, your job isn't to get an accurate interpretation. It's not to say this dead on thing. It's to love them and to do what God has asked you to do and say to them. No more, no less. So an important follow-up question when we prophesy over someone is, Jesus, do I tell them this now or do I wait? My friends have gotten really annoyed at me actually, because there's literally been times, especially as I was just starting to kind of dabble in the prophetic, where I will start saying something to them and then realize, oh, I'm not supposed to tell them this yet. Oh no, and I'll stop mid-prophecy. They got really mad at me. But it's important because it's not my job to be Jesus. It's my job to be his mouthpiece, and that sometimes means the mouthpiece needs to stay closed until he says it's time to speak. So keep in mind that stuff. Another thing is, especially as you're trying this out and you're learning, you're gonna make mistakes. Remember, we know that. It's not a big deal. You're learning, everyone's learning. But the way we communicate after we get it wrong is also very important. I remember I was in Australia in a bookshop, and there was this woman, and I knew I was supposed to go talk to her. So I did, and I thought I had a word of knowledge for her. And I start saying it, and she was lovely, and she was like, oh, okay, I don't really think that has anything to do with my life. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And I had a choice in that moment. I either could get really flustered and embarrassed and awkward and run away, or I could just speak the truth. And so I said to her, I'm sorry about that. I'm still learning this thing and practicing it, but just think, God sent someone all the way over here just to tell you how much he loves you. Like, he sent me to make a fool of myself just so he can show you how real he is and how much he loves you. And that really impacted her. And so we often think, oh, we have to get this right. Oh gosh, blah, blah. No, you just have to show Jesus. You just have to show his love. That's the important thing, especially as we're starting to learn how to give these words and how to prophesy over people. Now, when someone gives you a prophetic word, you also have a responsibility. And if you're teaching prophecy or if you're sharing something prophetic, especially a directional word with someone, it's important to let them know this side of it too. Specifically, I'm talking about Christians now. But when you receive a prophetic word, it is then your job to take it to Jesus. There's actually two important parts of prophecy and a prophetic encounter. There's the prophet, the one speaking the word, and there's the one receiving it. And there's actually, 1 Thessalonians talks about this, that it is the responsibility of the one hearing it to sift that word, to take it to Jesus and decide if it's right for them. And so if you receive a prophetic word, you might automatically know, no, that's not Jesus. And that's okay. You can be kind to the person about it and just say, I don't know, I don't think that's it. But if it's a big word, take it to Jesus. Pray about it. See what he says about it. And if you're giving a big directional word to a fellow brother or sister, tell them that too. Say, this is what I'm hearing, but take it to Jesus. See what he has to say about it. Because there are two parts in this puzzle. And if you're receiving it as a believer, you have a responsibility, same as they do. So that kind of concludes my very brief 3-part overview of what prophecy is. But just remember, you are a prophet and you can prophesy. So get out there, church, start prophesying over people, start sharing the heart of God with people and his message with the world, and start loving them well through the prophetic. You're great. See you guys.